Okay, let's talk about Pharmacare, which you just mentioned. It's what I wanted to follow up on. The NDP gets credit for leading the way on Medicare decades ago, but it couldn't get its way on Pharmacare. It was just too much, and you had to cut a deal. So it's the missing link. We have free Medicare, but not free medicines. And now the Liberal budget is putting all its eggs, essentially, in childcare, and we'll see where that goes. But I guess my question to you is a very political one, not partisan, but just about the nature of democracy and communication. How do you mobilize people for Pharmacare? It's something I'm quite passionate about, whether it's me, Dr. Eric Hoskins, the NDP, which has consistently put it at the top. But there doesn't seem to be a hue and cry among the public, Mr. Singh. And that's what I'm going to, can I call you Jagmeet?
Yeah, just call me Jagmeet. I should have said that at the beginning. Sorry. Yes, for sure, Martin. Yes.
Like, where is the clamor from Canadians? And I worry that much like Americans, people are actually satisfied. Most people, not everyone, that there's millions who fall through the cracks, but most unionized workers, most professional workers and others have workplace benefit plans. And so they think they're okay. So how do you actually mobilize Canadians and create that groundswell so that politicians will act? Because Pharmacare has a lot of advocates among economists and analysts and so on who see the benefits.
Yeah, it's the big question. How do we mobilize people? For sure. It's always a big thing on our minds. With Pharmacare, a couple of things that I found that's been really compelling is when we put the issue into a story that impacts people. And I think about some of the students that I met who, one of the students I met was graduating from a master's program in BC. And she said, I was healthy my whole life. I was an athlete, never had a problem. And I had adult onset type 1 diabetes, which is a type of diabetes that's just genetic. There's no, she was healthy. She ate well. It was not something that was brought on by poor diet. She just got it. And then all of a sudden, when she graduated, she realized she had no drug plan. And she was a master's student, graduated with a huge cost. And she thought, I never imagined that I would need medication coverage, but I do. I remember I spoke to a kid who also has a lifelong illness, and he has to deal with it. And he's healthy, precocious young kid, filled with energy and really mature beyond his years. And I said, well, what's it like for you? And he's like, oh, I don't worry about the medication. I make sure I take it on time. I know that I might die if I don't take it. And he kind of said it so casually. I was so impressed with him. And then he said, but you know what? I am worried about something. And I go, well, what are you worried about? He said, I'm worried about my mom and dad because I know it costs them a lot to pay for my medication. I looked at that and I said, like, a little kid should not be worried about that. And the reality is, when we invest in this, we know that it just makes sense. And I don't care for people to call this a progressive thing or not progressive thing. It just makes sense to do. When we've got a healthcare system where you can go into a doctor and say, hey, I'm not feeling well. They find out what's wrong with you, prescribe medication, and you can't actually afford to take it. You end up getting more sick and you will end up back in that same hospital.
Of course.
But then with the worst conditions, which cost a lot more. It just makes sense. So I believe we can appeal to people through sharing the stories of how much difference this would make and how this could make our healthcare system just take better care of each other.
Okay, I have a trick question for you. I apologize in advance.
I'm not surprised.
Because I'm serious about Pharmacare. I'm serious about Pharmacare. Liberals are going big on childcare, they're kind of sidelining Pharmacare for the moment. Can you do both? Can you have childcare, as important as it is? I am passionate for that as well. Can you have childcare, Pharmacare, NDP, Dentacare, NDP canceling student loans for up to $20,000? Can you do it all?
We can. And the reason why we can, it's a matter of choices. And we kind of went through some of these choices. For example, when we talked about forgiving student debt, we looked at the cost of what that would be. And we looked at what the previous governments have done. In 1 year alone, 2017, the Liberal government forgave over $7 billion of corporate debt that they were owed. There was corporate loans and they just forgave those loans. And in contrast, if we forgave student debt, it would lift up students and it would be less expensive than that in 1 year. So we look at the choices that governments make. We also look at the fact that it's a cost right now to our economy. It is a cost to our country that offshore state havens are still allowed. There was a recent court case just a couple of years ago where CRA took a big grocery store to court and said they are hiding their money in offshore accounts. The judge accepted the evidence, said, yes, they make their profits entirely in Canada. Yes, it looks like they took all that profit and put it into a bank in the Caribbean. And yes, they did that solely for the purpose of hiding their money. But it's actually completely legal for them to do that, so there's no penalty. That's what we're up against. We are making it, well, I am not. Liberals and conservatives have made a choice to cost us money by allowing tax havens, by allowing web giants to make profits off Canadians but not pay taxes here, by allowing the ultra-rich to not pay their fair share. And that is a choice. I would not make that choice. Instead, I would choose to invest in people increase that revenue, and make the right choices that help people out.
Okay, let me get a little chunky for a moment because we're on a university campus. You want to do all these caring things. So by which I mean long-term care, pharmacare, dental care, child care. But you can't do it yourself. Even if you do what you say you're going to do and win the next election and become prime minister, you still have to get the provinces to play ball, especially on long-term care, especially on child care, on all of them, pharmacare. Ontario says it won't do it. How do you do that?
This is where we have to respect the beauty and the challenges of a federalist country. I think it's incredible that we give a lot of that the Constitution and the Charter is designed in such a way that respects the differences of different parts of our country, different regions and territories and provinces. That's something that's special and gives a lot of autonomy and voice to people. But we know some of the most incredible things that we've done have happened with federal leadership. Healthcare was the same thing. Not all provinces wanted to sign on. It took a while. And I believe you just got to get started. And getting started means that we know that there's Atlantic provinces who've signaled interest. The Yukon previously signaled interest in moving forward. We start somewhere, just as we did with universal healthcare. We start somewhere and show the benefits, talk about how the people in those provinces and territories are better off, and then start to apply pressure and say, we can make this happen in other provinces. It took years. It wasn't like we made universal healthcare happen in 1 year. It took a long time. It was a battle. And so similarly, it's a battle that I'm willing to fight and I believe in, and it will take time and it will mean negotiating, but it's worth doing.
But it's taken 60 years for pharmacare, and that's not your fault. It's our fault, and that's the jujitsu we were talking about earlier.